A significant finding, of course, having to do with health. An ancient 7th century BC toilet reveals the dangerous parasites once plagued the elite of Jerusalem in ancient Israel. Now, you'll notice as we read the article, it's not just the elite that were plagued by these parasites, but also everybody else. Because of the fact that they used the human feces from these areas to use as fertilizer for their crops, if you could believe that. This is according to the PDF file of Science Direct. Mid-7th century BC human parasite remains from Jerusalem. And this has to do with intestinal parasites, ringworts, tapeworms, and all these types of worms that we have in us. And especially in the Mediterranean, we know this was going on all the time. The objective was to determine the species of intestinal parasite present in the 7th century BC high-status residents of Jerusalem to expose the history of regional health and sanitary conditions. 15 sediment samples were collected from a cesspit below a stone toilet seat found at the site of Huma Huma, southern Jerusalem. The toilet installation was located in the garden adjacent to the monumental structure with extraordinary architectural elements. They used a light microscope to identify and measure these eggs, and the result was the presence of 4 intestinal parasite eggs, the Trichus trichuria or whipworm, Tania meaning beef pork tapeworm, Ascaris lumbricioides roundworm, and also the pinworm Enterobius vermicularis. So it was whipworm, tapeworm, found in beef and pork. If we don't cook them properly, why would they eat pork? They weren't supposed to, but they did, I guess. Roundworm and pinworm, four types of worms. It's the earliest appearance of roundworm and pinworm in the ancient Israel parasitological record. And they concluded that the findings reveal that the intestinal parasitic diseases, most likely caused by poor sanitary conditions, were a human problem in the late Iron Age of Israel, affecting even the high-status groups. It's a significant finding. The study demonstrates the potential of archaeoparasitological investigations to expand the knowledge of origin and history of regional infections. And in addition, the parasitological evidence enabled us to determine the purpose, they said, of the cubical perforated stone artifacts, the stone toilet seats, rather than cultic objects as currently debated. They were actually toilet seats with a hole drilled in the middle. You'd sit on it and, that's it. And the hole would, through the hole would go everything else. Now, the eggs of some parasites are less durable, so may theoretically be absent due to selective preservation. Now, for further research, in the introduction, what they did, basically, the bad thing was that they used them for fertilizing their fields. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box. They tested various aged cesspits. That means, of course, a cesspool. The earliest findings date back to the late Bronze Age from 15th to 13th century BC, then mid-14th century BC, and late Bronze Age as well. And in all 3 cases, the installations were located in palaces, indicating their use by members of ruling groups. Several toilet seats were exposed from late Iron Age, and one near Rahel. Pits associated with drainage systems were exposed in northern Israel as well, suggesting they were part of a toilet installation. Unfortunately, only 2 archaeological parasitological studies were conducted on those toilets. During the excavation at Huma Huma, several sediment samples associated with toilet seats were collected for archaeoparasitological investigation regarding sanitary conditions of the 7th century BC high-status residents of Jerusalem. They go into the methods here, what they did, and the results were 6 archaeological samples found containing the, as we said, the parasite eggs of the 4 classes of tapeworms, of worms, the whipworm, the beef pork tapeworm, roundworm, and the pinworm. The highest parasite egg concentrations were recorded for sample number 5, which was taken from just below the stone toilet installation. I'm sorry to... Okay, this is important stuff because this had to do with their health, obviously. But the surprising thing is, here it says, they're common in conditions of limited sanitary, poor hygiene, or inadequate disposal of fecal matter, contamination of food and water supplies with the fecal waste, and the use of human feces as field fertilizer are prevalent. So they were even using this as their fertilizers for their fields. So you can imagine, whoever was eating that produce, even the animals that were being fed by these, produce, would be infected. The beef pork tapeworm causes moderate infections such as abdominal pain, nausea, and diarrhea. It requires cattle or swine as intermediate hosts. So again here, the cattle and the swine would be eating the produce from these fields, and then we would eat the cattle or swine, even the produce, and get them. To complete its cycle, is transmitted to the definitive human host through consumption of raw, salted, dried, smoked, or poorly cooked beef and pork. And the eggs of the parasite Enterabius vermicularis appeared in the lowest frequency through the assemblage. The low ratios may stem from preservation issues. The eggs of this pinworm are fragile, easily deformed, or lost completely from archaeological samples. Now, the pinworms are spread by fecal contamination of the hands or by airborne transmission as well, and cause intense anal itching at night. Okay, I guess that's when they mate. It's possible that as early as the 7th century BC, human feces were collected systematically from the city of Jerusalem in order to fertilize crops grown in nearby fields. During the 7th century, when Judea was under Assyrian rule, the hinterlands of Jerusalem, especially to the west, shifted to specialized agriculture versus mixed Mediterranean agriculture, and the inhabitants were forced to farm in hospitable rock terrain and were told to which types of crop to grow as well. Additionally, the type of fertilizer used might not have been dictated by the Assyrian economy, and modern research demonstrates that human fecal fertilizers increase crop yields. I guess that's why they were using that. But unless the feces are composted for many months before added to the fields, viable parasite eggs can spread to the plants. E.g., for example, the study from Pook in 2006. Hence, the use of human feces as a crop fertilizer under the specialized Assyrian economy may have led to the growth in whipworm and roundworm. The almost total lack of sanitation technologies may also have been the primary trigger for parasite distribution in ancient Israel. The presence of tapeworm eggs attests to the consumption of poorly cooked, perhaps raw beef or pork, and only meats that carry this parasite. They have various datings here. The occurrence of intestinal parasites, the summary given as well, the acknowledgements. But what I'm thinking about is these poor people must have suffered dysentery, must have suffered things like, intestinal flus, all types of things that upset your stomach, colitis or whatever, besides high fevers and typhoids and paratyphoids type of things. It's not just these tapeworms. It's everything else that goes with eating unclean things. I remember, I've not been to Egypt. They say that whoever goes to Egypt gets intestinal problems. You know, people that go to the Holy Land, even in Israel, come back after a day or two because something happens, something goes wrong. But that also happens if I've been to Istanbul 3 times, Constantinople, and you don't drink the water from the tap. You even brush your teeth with bottled water, okay? And you don't drink tap water. You drink only bottled water, and you don't have fruits and vegetables. You have everything that you have has to be properly cooked. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem with your health, intestinal problems, like paratyphoid, okay? Diarrhea and thing, nauseousness. So that goes without saying that these things are still there in countries that don't have proper water cleansing, like we do in the United States. We do, thank goodness. There are many countries still in Europe that you can't drink the tap water from. Anyway, this is the history of what goes on there. I'll leave a link below for you for this from Science Direct, and various scientists have come up with this. International Journal of Paleopathology. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support.